Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. Today's a big day. It's going to take a while, but my mind won't let me not do this now because of the previous couple of videos. So everything that's in pots, with the exception of the holy clay pots, because they were only watered yesterday, so I need those to dry off before they can be treated, so they'll get done separately. But today, with the exception of this crew, you have to bear in mind that as far as Fusarium is concerned, I've never heard of anybody getting it in a Paphiopedilum or a Restrepia or a Masdevallia or a Dracula. Yeah, so at the moment I'm not particularly worried about them, and again they were all watered yesterday, so I want this treatment to work on dryish roots. However, the Miltonia will get treated. They'll get done with the holy clay pots because again they're soaking wet at the moment. You have to think about it. If I'm going to dunk a pot and get as much of this fungicide into the roots and the base of the plant as I possibly can, if the pot's already wet, I'm going to dilute the fungicide before it gets in the plant, which might even be enough to actually make it ineffective, so there would be no point. So it's best done with a virtually dry pot and dry roots. That way those roots will just suck it up, same as they would do if you were watering. Now, because this is replacing what would have been a watering session today, and I'm going to get at virtually every potted plant, I've had to use my RO water. Yeah? You think about what I'm just going to do. I'm going to water all my plants. The fact that they've got a fungicide in it is irrelevant. I'm still watering them, so I'm using my RO water. And unfortunately that bucket took 8 litres, and that's nearly all of my RO water gone. But luckily there's enough to do the pots today, I hope. But in the meantime, the RO unit's busying itself outside, replenishing the stocks. So what I've done initially is I've measured 8 litres of water in there accurately. If you're going to mess with chemicals, do as it says in the instructions. Don't play games. And the most important thing in those instructions are the safety precautions, and I really can't state that enough. They're there for a reason, and if you're worried about using what to you is a strong chemical of any sort, if you go to the manufacturer's website, normally you can find the health and safety government official sheets that go with that, which will go into much more detail and enable you to make the decision, am I prepared to use that or not? But the most important thing with fungicides and pesticides is protect our environment. Don't contaminate the outside world. Knock the bees down and all sorts of damage can be done. So, you know, any leftover stuff dispose of safely. Yeah, I mean, certainly most of this stuff, it says do not pour down drains. Well, if you think about what you chuck down your toilet to keep it clean, they don't stop you doing that, do they? Nonetheless, keep it away from watercourses, ponds, outdoor plants, especially if in bloom, where there could be bees involved. We've got to look after our bees. So follow the instructions. Okay, so that's that out the way. So 8 litres of water minus that. Why? Well, because the next thing I'm going to do is pour some of this into this little measuring thing, and this stuff, there's a little bit trickling down there, is like, it's thick, it's like double cream. Yeah, well, if I put 20 millilitres in there and tip it into the bucket, there's going to be quite a bit left in there, isn't there? So I can use that to give that a good flush and make sure the 20 ml is in there before I add another 20 ml in. Yeah, this is 5 ml per litre. Why do you think I've got 8 litres in the bucket? Because that says 20. Work it out. It's not difficult. Planning, that's called. Because I don't want to have to measure 5 litres separately because I used 9 litres in the bucket or something daft like that. So I've deliberately chosen 8 litres of water, so 2 lots of 20 ml, flushed in between, into there, give it a good mix up, and then we're underway. So I'll be back when I've done that because I need 2 hands. I suppose if I'm going to do this subject thoroughly, I really ought to do it thoroughly, didn't I? So just to show you what I mean, that's my 20 ml. And watch what happens when I pour it in. You can see the consistency. Yeah? That's what happens in there. Yeah? But look at how much is still left in there. Yeah? So that now needs a good flush to make sure I've put 20 ml in the bucket, and then repeat. That consistency means it sticks. It sticks to whatever you're measuring. And as a percentage of 20 ml, there's probably 2 ml left in there. Well, that means it's not at the correct strength. It's important. If you're going to use these sorts of things, do as it says. Don't overdose, you could damage your plants, and by underdosing it might not even work. So just do what it says on the tin. There's been a lot of work and science gone into producing the flipping stuff. I don't think I know any better than they do, so I'm going to stick to what it says on the tin. Okay, that's my stuff mixed up, putting that to one side for now. I just want to go over what we're dealing with here. Fusarium is a fungus. Yes, and it spreads by producing spores, and it's that inside the plant that clogs it up. Effectively, the pathways that allow nutrients to flow and water to come in and flow to all the parts of the plant gets bunged up fundamentally at the rhizome stage. That's where you will find the biggest concentration. That's where it seems to like to be. And I'm going to pick on a plant yet again, simply because it's the best example I've got. This is my Miltonia. This arrived infected. This is Queen Anne. If you look at the two oldest pseudobulbs, and you can see there was an attempt to push out a new growth. That's been there over a year. It's never going to grow. That's the part of the plant that's clogged up. Yeah, there was more to that plant, but that got cut off because at the time I got it, it had several pseudobulbs, and these two we're looking at now on the left were the front end of the plant. So this was the bit I had to keep. So this was treated as per instructions, and it did produce that single new growth, which grew on to a size bigger than any previous bulb. So that was good, but that's not definitive enough. So if we then come round to the front of the plant, that single bulb, which is now in the middle, produced two new growths, one each side. Also produced some new roots, good sized bulbs, and nice leaves, and they both bloomed. And now each one of those is producing two new growths. Yeah? Okay, this one on this side's got one getting going and one just starting. But effectively, so it's gone from one new growth after treatment to 2 to 4. So as far as I'm concerned, this plant is probably safe. That part of the plant is still bunged up. And when it attempted to put that little new growth out, it failed. It can't get any nutrients or anything past the blockages. But the idea is to stop it multiplying, kill the fungus, stop it producing any new spores, and if the plant's capable, subsequent growths should be clean. So is that plant going to get treated today? Of course it is. My Miltonia Sunset was one of my strongest, most vigorous Oncidium types, and it had Fusarium. So there's no guarantee that just because a plant's growing pretty well, it hasn't got it. And if it's got it, it's also capable of spreading. Spores can be airborne, and they can certainly be waterborne. But with Fusarium, its concentration is inside the plant, not outside. Once it gets in there, it's like coming in from a really harsh environment that is only just survivable to finding a real comfort zone. And that's where it spreads, inside the plant. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist outside the plant, but it's not in a good state when it's outside the plant. Yeah. So it's once it's inside the plant in its happy zone, that's when it gets going. And that's when you can't see it, unless you cut a rhizome. Now, on that subject, Cattleyas are prone. rhizome types, possibly bulbophyllums, but I haven't got enough to worry about those or know any different, but Cattleyas are prone. Oncidiums and all their intergenerics, they're prone, yeah, but they're also, under normal circumstances, vigorous enough to grow out of it. Now let's have a look at something else. Oh, we'll pick this one because it's under my nose. If you suspected one of your Phalaenopsis had Fusarium, cut the rhizome, think it through. What are you going to do? If you cut that rhizome near the base, you've just cut all your roots off. And in this case, the spike as well. Yeah? So if Fusarium gets in a monopodial type orchid, you've probably lost it. So that's a type of monopodial. What about one like that then? Yeah? The older part of the rhizome there is down in the basket. And a lot of the roots coming off of that plant are not really as functional as perhaps they once were. I won't use the word dead. But if, for instance, I decided to take this out of this basket, yeah, I would lose some of these older roots that are firmly attached probably, and I would end up with a stubby bit at the bottom of the plant that's ugly. So I would probably snip it off on the grounds that, look at all of these healthy roots coming out farther up. So I wouldn't lose a large percentage of the root system. And at that point, I might discover that it's got Fusarium. Perish the thought. Now what can you do? Well, all you can do is creep slowly up the rhizome until it's clean, or so faint that you think you might get away with it, and hopefully at that point you've still got some roots coming out and you may save the plant. Yeah, you've got to think it through. Yeah, and not all monopodials will even respond very well. I mean, the chances are, with all the new leaves this thing's chucking out and this massive spike, I'd be very, very surprised if that had been anywhere near Fusarium, on the grounds that it needs food and water to do that sort of thing, and do that sort of thing at the top. And the roots have been growing all year. Well, that's another sign of Fusarium, is roots failing, because they can't get they just don't work anymore because they're bunged up basically. So you can get them wet, but it doesn't go anywhere, so they stop growing basically. So that's some thoughts on what it is. Now, you will read some articles if you want to go and dig around. There's a lot on it, and there's an awful lot of contradiction around, and a lot of that contradiction comes from older articles prior to some serious science going on. And some of those articles are based on what somebody thinks rather than what they know. There is a difference. So watch not only what you read, but where you're reading it from. And there are reliable sources that allow articles to be published because they sound good. Nobody checks them out. Yeah? They just come from somebody who in the past has always done good things, so up it goes, and then the whole world end up reading it. So watch what you read. There's been an awful lot of work done on this subject, simply on the grounds it can get into our food crops and wipe them out. So it's serious stuff when you start talking about, our food products, what we need to eat. You're getting into the agriculture now. I mean, it'll even get into a lawn and kill a lawn. So work has been done to find solutions, and those solutions are now available in some good scientific articles on what this flipping stuff is, how it multiplies, and what you can use to deck it with. Therein lies another subject, what to use. Now, Anna Maria of my mouth won't work. Miracle Orchids, I'll get there in a minute, did an awful lot of work on this, and as far as I'm concerned, got the greatest respect. As such, there's a lot of information on her channel. She's also written an ebook with everything in it, but the good bit about it is it not only analyses it, looks at all the different reports and science and, you know, chemical producers that have come up with stuff and, you know, why it works, how it works. Everything like that is all there. There's a lot of reading to do, but it's all there. But the important thing that she's come up with, out of all of those articles, she collectively gathered together all of the lower level chemicals that will work. And how many of those can I get? One. I could get some sneakily if I tried, but at the moment the one I've got seems to have done the job in the past. But quite honestly, if you're going to use a regular fungicide sort of precautionary protection element in your collection, you need to get 2 or even 3 and rotate them. For the same reason as pesticides. You know, things can develop some sort of immunity, and I'll state my normal statement: if the flipping stuff did its job properly, you wouldn't even need a second treatment. But we're not allowed to have the full strength stuff. It's dangerous. I sort of agree. You know, we're not responsible adults anymore. We're treated like children. But anyway, there's a lot of articles around over on Anna Maria's channel. I'll put a link to her channel because it is worth a visit. I have never seen such a central point to get all of the information that there probably is out there collected together in one place. So somebody else has done the work so that we can go and take advantage of it. So I haven't seen the eBay book that she created, but it is, you know, an elaborate analysis of this problem specifically for orchids, collecting all the information together and the sorts of chemicals you can use, if you can get hold of them, of course. Right, so I've got a busy day today. I'm going to show you something you never would have thought you'd have seen. First of all, I'm going to state I hate them. But unfortunately, the blue manly gloves were in the large size, and I've got delicate little pinkies. Well, they're not delicate, but they're little. So I've had to get the girly pink ones. Sorry if you find that statement offensive, but these were the ladies' ones, as it said on the packet. But I've tried them on. I hate them, but they fit. Now think about what I'm going to be doing all day long. I'm going to be inserting pots into that bucket. If I didn't wear gloves, it will be all over my hands. Now, in small amounts when I'm using a sprayer or something like that, oh, and you're in for a treat, I've just spotted something out of the corner of my eye. Whoopee! I'll do that in a minute. If I get a small amount on my hands with normal sort of individual plant treatments or something like that, I just wash my hands. But I'm going to be in and out of that bucket all day long. So it says wear gloves. We've got the gloves. I already don't like it, but I'm going to have to do it. You know, like I said, if there are safety precautions, you need to deal with them. Yeah, so let's get at it. I'm not looking forward to it. And now I'm going to shut the camera off and leave it at that for this one. There's no point in me showing what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a pot, dunk it in the bucket, hold it there for a while until the whole pot is full of liquid, and then take it out and put it to drain somewhere. And repeat until I either run out of the stuff or I run out of pots. So there's no point in showing that. That's, I don't want to state the obvious basically, but that's the treatment they're going to get. And very few exceptions on the grounds that I found it in one of my best plants. Well, if it's in there, what about some of the plants that aren't doing so well? Is that the reason they're not doing so well? So let's get on and treat the lot. See you next time. Right, before I get the gloves on, I just had a quick light bulb moment. Unfortunately, it was shot down in no uncertain terms. I thought, if I'm going to go through all my pots and give them a good soak in fungicide, well, why don't I do the pesticide systemic treatment at the same time? Unfortunately, that's apparently not such a good idea. Some articles on the internet suggest that fungicide and pesticides can be mixed together, but there seems to be more disapproval than approval, and in some cases one can deactivate the other and you lose the point, if you see what I mean. And also, from my point of view, it would double the strength of stuff in that water, and to me, on second thoughts, perhaps that isn't such a good idea. So that'll have to be separate, unfortunately. Pussycat. Yeah, so it was a nice idea, but shot down immediately. It doesn't seem to be a good idea to mix the two together. So, right, I've now got one of those situations where I've fed and watered myself. I've done everything I need to do, and that includes putting this camera down any minute now, because once I get these gloves on and start, it's going to be a right faff to stop and come back and carry on later. You see what I mean? So I'm going to have to try and do this in one go. So deep breath and let's get at it.